Okay, so we'll get started. Please join me with the Guru Pranam and the Mangala Charan. This presentation is dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padahan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jayatam Shurato Pangur Mama Manda Matirgatihi Matsarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohana Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Srimat Ratnagara Simhasanasto Srimat Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Sriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivatastatastitaha Karshan Venu Swanair Gopir Gopinata Sriyastunaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupada Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Rasimhaiti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayitim Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Tatsat Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nigamakalpataror Galitam Phalam Sukamukaram Ritadravya Samyutam Vivata Bhagavatam Rasam Alayam Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanaabhaya, Nama Pankajamaline, Nama Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajangri. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back again to our Srimad Bhagavatam. This is continuing with chapter 3. So, the title was Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And we have done 3 sessions before. So now we are doing the 4th session. Hopefully I can finish the chapter today. So let's see. Okay, quite a lot of things to talk about in this chapter. But anyway, we will try our best. So a bit of recap before we dive into this topic. So if you remember, we have talked about the various Purusha avatars. The Purusha avatars are yes. Okay, there's some kind of notation here. Let me just clear it. Okay. All right. So there are Purusha avatars, and basically the sages, they wanted to know how the Lord comes to this material world and what are the things he does. So there are basically 2 categories of incarnations mainly, right? One of it is the purpose of creation. So the purpose of creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material universes. And this purpose is known as Purusha avatars when the Lord comes. So we've talked about that, Karana Dakashayi Vishnu, how he, from the pores of the body of Karana Dakashayi Vishnu, innumerable universes emanate. And all of these universes are like a small bubble coming out from the pores of his skin. And in each bubble, Karanodakashayi Vishnu enters into each of these bubbles or universe. And there he lies down, and that time he is known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And from there, a lotus stem emanates from his navel, and Brahma is born, and the 14 planetary systems are created. And after that, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu further expands into a local embassy within these 14 planetary systems known as Shvetadweep. And from there, he's called at that time Shirodakashayi Vishnu, that Vishnu who lies in the ocean of milk. And from there, he expands himself, mirrors himself into every living atom and space between the atoms. In this way, he becomes the Paramatma. So we've discussed this. And then that answers pretty much question 4. The sages, if you remember, they asked 6 questions. So the 4th question is they wanted to ask about the Purusha avatar. How does the Lord create, maintain, and annihilate? So that was that. And then from verses 6 to 27, right, about 26 incarnations were mentioned. And these incarnations were the Leela avatars, how the Lord comes to perform various pastimes. And then we talked about the various categories of the pastimes. And then these are all the different incarnations. You can see we went through them. So we went through them briefly in chapter 3. And in the entire Bhagavatam, in the later cantos, cantos 2, 3, basically from cantos 3 onwards, we will go in detail about all of these different incarnations. So here, just a preview of all these incarnations are presented. And then it was discussed how all of these incarnations, so many incarnations, if you remember the analogy, like how rivulets of water cascades down from a waterfall, like that. So, so many different branches of incarnations. We categorize them also. Remember the categories, right? The Purusha, the Leela, the Satyavesha avatars, the Manvantara avatars, the Yuga avatars, right? All the different categories. So, but all of them spring forth from Swayam Bhagavan. So that was established also in chapter 3. How Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the origin of all of these avatars. He is the original source of the candle, which lights all the other candles, right? There's a verse in the Brahma Samhita, Jnana Deepeshvana, Can't remember that verse now. Okay, anyway, there's a verse in the Brahma Samhita which mentions how the Lord is like the original candle, and Krishna is that Swayam Rupa, the original form. And this original form expands into many, many, many categories of forms, right? But they are, the brightness of each candle is miraculously the same as every other candle. But still, the original candle maintains its originality. He is the source of everything. So we talked about Avatari Swayam Bhagavan. And then at the end of verse 29, the Stuti Phalan, the fruit of the recitation of these verses was mentioned. So whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and in the evening gets relief from all miseries of life. So this was the first Stuti Phalan presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. It begins with the various incarnations of the Lord, establishing clearly the different categories and forms of the Lord. Right. So today we are continuing from verse 30 onwards. So now that we have understood about the various categories of the incarnations, let's talk about a little bit more about the nature of these incarnations. So this verse will mention this, 30. Etat rupam bhagavato hi arupasya chit atmanaha maya gunair virachitam mahadadibhir atmani. So the first part, etat rupam. So all of these rupa, etat means all of these forms of the Lord, the incarnations of Bhagavan, of Bhagavato, etat rupam bhagavato, all these various incarnations and forms of the Lord, Hi arupasya chit atmanaha. They are actually arupasya. That means they actually have no form. All these forms of the Lord has no form. Now what does that mean? Actually, it means that arupasya here means that they don't have material form. So because we are starting from step by step, so we begin with the understanding of matter. Because we are living in this material world, we have no experience of the spiritual world that we can remember, right? So therefore, we start off with our own experience in the material world first. So the verse is establishing that all these forms are not material forms like what we understand. So hi arupasya, and instead of being material, they are, therefore it says here, chit atmanaha, they are transcendental spiritual forms. So that is firstly established. So the Lord's forms are not like our forms. They are not ordinary, they are not material. Now we will talk a bit more about this. Okay. So now that we have established that, so Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibir Atmani. So the translation is, the Lord has no material form, that we have established. The conception of the Virat Rupa of the Lord as appearing in the material world, Mahadadibir, is imaginary. Now we come to one level more. So, right, we understand that the Lord's form is not material. But not everybody is able to understand material form and spiritual form. Most people don't understand what is spiritual form. So for some people, for these categories of people, right? So the Lord talks about the Virat Rupa. Now in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, we talked about Virat Rupa, right? Arjuna will ask, okay, I've heard about all that you have said about your glories. Now, there are some people who are not so very intelligent. So for their purpose, so that people don't doubt you anymore, can you show me all that you have spoken? So then the Lord displays his Virat Rupa, which is basically very, very amazing. So we understand the Lord has no material form. But what about this Virat Rupa? The Virat Rupa or the Vishwa Rupa, universal form, is made up of material elements. It's made up of, you know, we see the description in Bhagavad Gita, how different suns, planets, the elements of earth, water, air, all of these things are built inside the time element. All of these are making up the form of the Virat Rupa. So how do we understand this? So this is the verse here. Maya Gunair Virachitam. So Virat Rupa, the conception of the Virat Rupa of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is not real. So the Lord's incarnations, which we have heard previously, they are real, right? Narsimha, Vamana, by the way, today's Vamana Dvadasi. So therefore, all these incarnations are all real. They are eternally existing in the spiritual world, and they are spiritual. But the Lord, when he showed his Virat Rupa to Arjuna, that form of the Lord is imaginary. It's not real. It's an illusion. So it is Maya, using the power of Maya. So why does the Lord do this? Why does the Lord show this Virat Rupa? So Prabhupada says, it is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having a form, a spirit. Basically, this is basically the what you call evolution of consciousness. So people in a very lower consciousness who are extremely materialistic, they cannot tolerate it when you say spirit. When they say spirit, as soon as you say spirit, they say, okay, no, I don't want to hear anything. But if you talk about the universe, if you talk about how, the universe is expanding, if you talk about quarks and black holes and white dwarfs and the sun and galaxies, then they become very excited. So then they see, wow, the universe is so wonderful. The universe is so great. The universe is so mysterious. And then their awe for the universe increases more and more. So when someone drops in the suggestion that the universe is God, oh, that they can easily understand better compared to if you tell them that the universe has a spirit, that the Lord is a spiritual form. So for these categories of people, right, the Lord introduces the Virat Rupa. However, the Virat Rupa, as we said here, it's not real. Now, recall also, this is not the first time the Lord is telling this. If you remember from Srimad Bhagavatam, the very third verse of this chapter, 3.3, the verse also said the same thing. It is believed, we were talking about the Purusha avatars, we were talking about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and now in Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, where the lotus comes from his navel, right? So it says here, it is believed. Actually, the translation word used in the word-to-word translation, Prabhupada uses imagined. So it is believed or imagined that the Loka Vistara, that all the universe, the planets, the galaxies, Loka Vistara means all the different planetary systems, that all the planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha. So that is not true. It is believed or imagined. So it looks like that. But actually, the Lord is much more mysterious. So we will try to understand that mystery in today's verses. So Bhagavatam helps us to understand by giving us an example. Clouds and dust are carried by the air. Right, so here we can see, this is a sandstorm, right? You see a lot of sand, dust. Dust is being carried. Carried by what? Carried by air. Also clouds. Clouds are also floating in the sky, carried by air. But the buddhi bihi. What is buddhi? Buddhi means intelligence. Buddhi bihi means those who are intelligent. Buddhi bihi means those who are not intelligent. So the not intelligent, those who are less intelligent, what do they say? When they see sand or clouds floating in the air, right? They say that the sky is cloudy and the air is dirty. But actually, the air is just carrying. It's just a medium to carry. It doesn't become dirty. The moment it carries something from one place, it drops it, and then it continues flowing. Just like fragrance, right? Later also we'll come across this example. Bhagavad Gita also gives, right? The fragrance, just like when we see a garbage truck passing by, we don't see it sometimes, but we will smell it. So when we smell the garbage truck, does that mean we are contaminated? Does it mean that immediately I must go and take a bath now? No, it doesn't work like that, right? So therefore, the air carries it, but it's not contaminated by it. It drops it, carries the fragrance to a place. The moment the fragrance is absorbed by the material, then the air is free to move again. So in that way, similarly, who are they? The less intelligent people. Similarly, the less intelligent people, they also implant material bodily conceptions on the spirit self. So they don't understand the concept of spirit. You know, people say, oh, he's dead. Oh, he's gone. But where has he gone? The body is still there, right? So why do people say, oh, he's gone, when the body is still there? So that they will not address, but still they will not see it as spirit. So it's for this category of people, right? Similarly, such people, they implant material bodily conception on the spirit self. So their thinking is, if we have a material body, right? If my body is made up of all this, bone, skin, and everything, then God also must have a material body. So they cannot understand anything beyond that. So, scientists also speak in this direction. So they like to toy with the idea of a sentient universe. If you've come across this term, sentient universe, some of the scientists, they believe that the universe is sentient. That means it has consciousness. Because it's continuously expanding, certain random occurrences are happening within the universe which they cannot explain, and they are trying to see what is the logic behind. So therefore these concepts are there. So what do the Buddhibihi say, the less intelligent? Number one, the least intelligent of them all, they will say that there is no God. Atheist. These are the atheists. They cannot, because they cannot explain how the universe came into being or why it came into being, but at the same time they will say there is no God. So universe without God. That's the basic, the lowest of the Buddhibihi. And then one level higher than that, evolution of foolishness. From one level, it goes to a little higher. So this category of people, they say, God is the universe. So, have you heard, I think you might have come across some people who like to talk about the universe. They say, oh, the universe has a plan for me. The universe has, universe means well for me. I just have to pray to the universe. So there are some people who talk like that. I know a few of them. Some, anyway, so God is universe. So currently in modern era, we have very fancy names for this. So this is called pantheism. People who believe that the universe is sentient, that the universe is God, material, the planets, the moon, the sky, the sun. So, and then, so for basically for these type of people, this kind of gradual understanding is given in the scriptures. But Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost of scriptures. So therefore it goes straight to the point. It says, beyond this gross conception of form, so beyond the gross, there is another subtle conception of form. And what is this subtle form? This subtle form is also material. It is not spiritual yet. We haven't come to the spiritual level yet. So gross material form, subtle. So what is this subtle? How do we define subtle material form? So this verse 3.32 gives us the definition. Very easy. Subtle material form, number one, it is avyaktam. That means it is not manifested. It's not manifested. It's not easy to prove. Later, I'll give an example of what is this. I think some of us already know what do we mean by subtle material form. Number one, it is avyaktam, unmanifested. Cannot be, it's not easy to prove it, right? You can't, it's not tangible. Secondly, it is avyuddha. That means without formal shape or material qualities. It doesn't have a shape formally. It doesn't have material qualities. It is amorphous, something like that. Third, it is adrishta. Adrishta means it is unseen. And finally is ashruta, unheard. You cannot hear it, you cannot see it. So what do we know about gross? Okay, let's say gross material. For example, the scriptures say the Panchabhutas, earth, water, air, fire, ether, right? These are all gross. The most subtle of these is ether. But even ether, you can prove it. Avyaktam. It's not ether is not avyaktam because it is the means, all this internet, wireless, all this is going through ether. It's not going through air, it's going through ether, right? So therefore it is provable, it is conceptual, right? But it's very subtle. But there is something beyond. So what is this subtle material form? Mind, intelligence, and ego. This is the manas, buddhi, and ahamkara. Now, this Vedic scriptures tell us that these three things are not just abstract words, they are really elements. They are actually elements, just like earth, water, fire, air, ether, but it is different. It is subtle element. It is not gross. So there's gross material element, subtle material element, right? So we can understand this by this diagram here. So let's say we are born, we have this body, this is the gross material body. In Sanskrit, it's called stula sarira. Sarira means body. Stula means gross material body, right? So then we also have another body. We don't have only one body, we have another body, just like when we wear clothes. We have underclothing also, isn't it? So therefore, gross body and subtle material body. Now, this subtle material body is made up of mind, intelligence, and ego. Gross material body is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. They combine, permutate to form the three Ayurvedic, what do you call them? It's not element, kapha, vata, pitta. So the gross elements combine to form kapha, vata, pitta.
Three dosha.
Yeah, three dosha. Thank you. Doshas, yes, dosha. So, and then they further form these three doshas. They form the dhatu, the bones, the muscle, the flesh, the tissue, the blood. So all these things, and then that's gross. But this is material. This is subtle. Mind, intelligence, is ego. So it's not provable. Scientists understand that there is mind. They are already doing some experiments with the mind, but still it is not mainstream. It is still, paranormal. It's called paranormal, parapsychology, or basically the kind of mind over matter, ESP. So it's all very much under the table, but they are doing it. The Nazis have done it. The Russians, the Americans, they all are still doing it. They are playing with the mind, the ability of the mind as the sixth sense, right? Extrasensory perception and things like that. But they have not even come to intelligence yet. So they are just playing around with the mind. Intelligence is even more finer. It's difficult for them to actually grasp it as an element. And the last one is the false ego, which is the most subtle. It's very difficult for them to acknowledge. That's why they can acknowledge mind, they can acknowledge intelligence, but ego, most people will not accept. They will just say, what ego? No, this is me. So they can't see it that way. So the jiva has its form beyond the subtlety. This is a very interesting point. We are more than the mind, more than the intelligence, and more than the ego. The jiva has its form beyond the subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. So what happens, right? So we can understand gross material body, subtle material body is called the sukshma sarira. Sukshma means subtle material body, right? Both are material, huh? And both of these bodies contain the soul. Now, the soul alone is spiritual. And what happens at death? At death, right? This is what happens. The soul is carried out of the gross material body by the subtle material body. So the subtle material body is like the air which carries the dust or the clouds in the sky. So in this way, it carries. Now we already know the soul. We have two souls. One soul is us and the other soul is Paramatma. So two birds in a tree, given in the Mundaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, many other Upanishads. So they talk about these two birds. So because of the Lord sitting in our heart with us, all this is happening. Otherwise, nothing will happen, right? We alone don't have the power to change body, to do anything. We can't do anything. And what happens at death, at birth? At birth, the subtle body carrying the soul moves to a new gross material body. A new body, a new gross material body. This is called birth. But note, we still have the same subtle material body. The subtle material body, the mind, intelligence, ego did not change. It's the same as when we died earlier in our previous life. That's why you see children, babies, they have their ego, babies, and they have their intelligence and they have their mind also. It's brought forward. It's in a different body. The body has not developed yet, but it's there, waiting to mature. And it continues. So that's the thing. So now let's go back to what Prabhupada says. So less intelligent men who want to see God immediately with their material senses, they say, show me God, otherwise I won't believe in it, right? Without necessary qualification. So for this category of people, right, like Duryodhana and a few other people who cannot accept, so many people told Duryodhana that Krishna is God, or he couldn't accept. So to these people, what happens? They are shown first the gigantic material cosmos as the form of the Lord. So Virat Rupa. So that is for the less intelligent people. Although the Lord is within and without. So this is a mysterious statement, which we will talk about shortly. So this Virat Rupa is just a representation. It's an imaginary representation of how the Lord is. Now, let's go back to what the Buddhibihi say. What do the less intelligent people say? Number one, first we talked about atheist, right? Then we talked about how God is the universe, right? So they say the moon, the sun, everything, these are actually tangibly the body of the Lord. So they even say earth is part of the body of the Lord. So there are some nature people, the Gaia theory, if you have heard the Gaia theory, they say that God is earth. Earth is part of God. So you don't hurt earth. If you hurt earth, then you are breaking away part of God's body. So they say like that. So this is, at least they believe in God. It's a better than atheism. So pantheism, there are some people, now it's coming back again, New Age and all that, Then, even more, slightly more intelligent than these, they understand that actually God is a little bit more than that. He cannot just be the gross body of this earth or gross body of this material. There is something a little bit more, but all this universe is still part of him. So therefore they say universe is part of God. You see, there's a difference. It's not just the yellow color here indicates God, right? So they acknowledge that the universe is still part of God, but God is a little bit more. It's more like the universe is like our arms and legs. If we cut off our arms and legs, we will still live, right? So their understanding is God is like that. The material universe is like his arms and legs. So if you cut it off, he's still there. He's still there. So he's beyond that. So this is called panentheism. So there are some people who, especially the scientists nowadays, they like to talk about this panentheism. So for this kind of people, the less intelligent people, the Buddhibihi, the Virat Rupa is portrayed. Oh, they become very happy. Oh, okay, I understand. Oh, this is according to my theories. So therefore, you acknowledge also. But if you remember verse 3.3 earlier, the Lord has also said this statement. But he, the Lord, has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. Nothing to do. He is Bhagavato Rupam, very special form, Visuddha Sattva. He is beyond, he's transcendental, Urjitam. So therefore, Bhagavatam, it rejects this. Now, this panentheism concept is there in Vedic scriptures. As I said before, it's meant for, Vedic scriptures is meant for various different types of people. But Bhagavatam is the topmost literature. So it rejects this. Though it is accepted, Bhagavad Gita also, it presents it. But Bhagavatam clearly says this is imaginary. So therefore, if God has nothing to do with the created material ingredients, though he creates them, but he has nothing to do with them. So this is the model. God created the universe, but he has nothing to do with the universe. So this is called theism. This is real religion, theism. So that is the understanding that Bhagavatam is propounding. Now, to help us understand a bit better, let's look at analogies. The analogy here, let's compare the Jiva and the Bhagavan, just like how Bhagavatam is giving us. If it, Bhagavatam talked about the Jiva having a body, a gross body, right? So if Jiva has a gross body, what would be the gross material body of Bhagavan? So for less intelligent people, they think that Bhagavan also has a material body. So to satisfy them, okay, the universe is the material body of the Lord. So that is an analogy given. And then a bit more intelligent person, they recognize subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego. So if I have a subtle material body, then God also must have a subtle material body. So to satisfy these people, the Lord introduces the Virat Rupa, which is subtle. You cannot see the Virat Rupa. The universe is all tied to the Virat Rupa. Time, all the different planets, the planetary systems, they're all tied to the Virat Rupa. But they are subtle. You can't see it. Arjuna had to be given special vision to see it. Duryodhana had to be given special vision to see when he was shown. So therefore, this is the analogy. So gross universe. If our body is this gross body, God's material, so-called imaginary material body is the universe. If our subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and ego, God's so-called imaginary subtle material body is the Virat Rupa, right? Which is avyaktam, unmanifested, avyuddha, without formal shape, adrishta, unseen, and ashruta, unheard. So this is basically the difference between subtle and gross. But for the intelligent people who understand that there is Atma, the Lord's body is also Atma, Satchit Ananda Vigraha. It is special spiritual form. So the conclusion Prabhupada says is, number one, the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form. So his form is transcendental. It is spiritual and it is eternal, and it is neither gross nor subtle material form like that of what we have. So he has no form. So even if he comes to the material world, he does not take a material form which is gross or subtle. No, it is fully spiritual. That's the first point to understand clearly. His body is never to be compared to the gross and subtle bodies of the living being. We never compare our bodies to the Lord's body. It's very different. That's why when Arjuna says, oh, you are senior to me, no, Vivaswan is senior to you. How is it that you gave Bhagavad Gita to him? Then Krishna will tell Arjuna, many birds you have taken, you and I, but I remember them all, you don't. So because the Lord's body is spiritual, right? So Prabhupada says this, therefore, all such conceptions, what conception? this concept of gross universe being God, this concept of Virat Rupa as the form of the Lord, all such conceptions of God's body in this, what I've just mentioned, are imaginary. So this we have to understand very clearly before we move on. And then Bhagavatam continues, whenever one experiences by self-realization, whenever one experiences, each of us, by self-realization. What is this self-realization? Before I go further, let me define this self-realization. Prabhupada gives in his purport, right? Self-realization means becoming indifferent to the needs of the gross and subtle bodies. Since we just talked about those two things, right? So it means that we don't take it very seriously, our gross and subtle body. We become indifferent. We don't pursue their demands. We don't become their slave. We do not become the slave of our senses, which is very gross. We don't become slave of our mind, of our intelligence, or of our ego, which is subtle. So that means we are now going towards self-realization. That's what it means. And becoming, so that just being indifferent is not enough. It also means becoming serious about the activities of the soul, self. So two things comprise what is called self-realization. So when someone, by self-realization process, experiences that both the gross and subtle body, the sat asat rupe, the gross and subtle body, material bodies, we're talking about the gross. If by self-realization process, they realize that the gross and subtle body have nothing to do with the Atma. That means we are not affected by matter. Somebody insults us, we are indifferent. Somebody does any harm to us, we are indifferent. We cannot artificially pretend to be like that. We have to realize it by a spiritual process, right? So that's the problem, a lot of people, they are pseudo-spiritualists. They will pretend like as if I'm not affected, I'm not, but it's all a pretense. You cannot artificially pretend. We understand it theoretically, but it has to be realized by spiritual practice, right? So it will be natural. It's not something I tell myself, no, I'm unaffected. No, it doesn't work that way. We use the intelligence to help us, and then through our spiritual process of sadhana, then we come to that point. So when he realizes with self-realization process that the material bodies are different, nothing to do with the Atma, at that time he sees himself, the Atma. He sees himself, the Atma, and not only he sees himself, he also sees the Lord, Brahma Darshanam. So that is the point. So this is self-realization process. Now, self-realization process has three stages. The preliminary stage of seeing the Lord is Brahman realization, which is actually very kindergarten. So, they don't really see a clear picture of the Lord. It's all light. It's a very basic preschool form of realization. Higher realization is they see the Paramatma having a form in his heart. But the highest realization, because the Paramatma does nothing, he just stands there, he witnesses, he doesn't do anything. But the highest realization is Bhagavan realization, where we see the form of the Lord performing activities and interacting with the other jivas. So that is the highest realization of the Supreme Lord. And we need to have qualification to go to these higher realizations and the right process for them. So Bhagavad Gita talks about all that. So Srimad Bhagavatam continues, if the illusory energy, Devi Maya, subsides, right? The word subside, uparata, that means it goes down. So if the illusion in surrounding us subsides, and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge by the grace of the Lord. So by the grace of the Lord, as knowledge, transcendental knowledge increases, you see, the more in Bhagavad Gita, transcendental knowledge, chapter 4, is described as Jnana Plave Naiva. Jnana Plave Naiva means the boat of transcendental knowledge. Now, the more, why we call it boat? Because we are now in the samsara sagara, the ocean of material suffering. And this ocean is tossing, 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 tossing. A very terrible ocean. You know, imagine a stormy ocean and you are given a boat. Better than nothing, isn't it? At least you are out of the water a bit. But that boat is like the knowledge. So if the boat is very small, if our knowledge is very small, then the ocean is so stormy, it's difficult. But as by the grace of the Lord, as we perform our spiritual activity, our knowledge increases, our boat becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In a big boat, even if there is stormy ocean, it doesn't really shake the boat so much, right? We are not disturbed. So by the grace of the Lord, as we become enriched with knowledge, and as we become enriched with knowledge, the effect of Maya becomes less and less on that person. Just like how the ocean cannot affect someone so situated in a big boat. Then what happens? Then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory. So he realizes, what is this own glory? This own glory is him realizing his swadharma, to understand his relationship. Not only that he is glorious, why he is glorious? Because of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Because of that, he is glorious. So, and then he becomes, wow, this is my relationship with the Lord. So that is the realization that the Jiva will attain. So Prabhupada says, because the Lord is the absolute transcendence, by his omnipotency, he can perform anything and everything. Now, just now I said, right, as transcendental knowledge increases, the Maya Shakti dwindles, it reduces, its effect becomes less and less in the person. So this is very interesting. The Lord is transcendental. He's absolute, he's transcendental, he's omnipotent. He can perform anything and everything. So this sentence is very interesting. He can turn the external energy into internal energy by his will. Very interesting point. So the material energy not necessarily remains material forever. The Lord can change matter to spirit and spirit to matter as he likes. That is his special ability. Very, very wonderful, isn't it? So to help us understand, Prabhupada gives an example. The example is like electricity. Now, electricity can be used to heat something. Yeah, I'm showing you an oven. We can also use electricity to cool something. Okay, I'm showing you a freezer box. So the same electricity coming can, just by some adjustment, it can be used to either increase the temperature or it can be used to reduce the temperature. So in the same way, the Lord's energy can be used, right? Prabhupada says, therefore, by his grace, the external energy which is employed in illusioning those living beings who want to have it subsides by the will of the Lord. Now, the living entities, they are put into illusion, Mahamaya. It's called Mahamaya, right? Why are they being put into illusion? Because the living entity desires to be the enjoyer of material energy. He wants to enjoy separately from the Lord, right? So the Lord covers the living being in the mystery of forgetfulness of the spiritual identity of the Jiva. The Jiva forgets that he has anything to do with God. Because if he remembers that God is there, he always remembers that God owns everything. He's the master, he's the proprietor. So therefore, how am I going to enjoy as the master? I want to be the master. So if he's always remembering that the Lord is the master, he cannot, so because of that, the Lord covers the Jiva with Maya Shakti, Mahamaya, and puts him into forgetfulness. And when that happens, the Jiva thinks he's got a material body by the grace of Maya also, Maya Shakti, by the grace of the Lord. We've studied this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13 and 14, right? How the Jiva is injected into the womb of Prakriti. So, and then he becomes forgetful. He forgets his nature. He thinks that he is the body. So this is called role playing. Imagine like an actor wants to act in a movie, right? So he wants to take up the role very seriously. You know the movie Dracula? It's a very old classic movie, Dracula. I forgot the name of the actor, the old one, not the new one, the old one. I read about it. It said that the actor was so into acting the role of Dracula that he would go home and he will sleep not on his bed, he will sleep in his coffin. He will have a box built in his house and then he will sleep inside there because he wants to really immerse himself in that role as a Dracula, coming out from the coffin and then haunting people. So these are the actors have that kind of quirky nature. So it's called role playing. They forget who they are. Like in a drama, they forget who they are and they get into the role so much that they become emotional, that they cry. Another example is when we watch movie. When we watch movie, we see, sad movie. We start crying when we see what's happening in the movie. We become so attuned to the movie. Or horror movie, we become so scared. Oh, though we know it's all just illusion. Or in a dream, tiger is coming in a dream. We shake in fear and we cry and we wake up and we see tears in our eyes. So these kind of things, right? So that is Mahamaya. So Prabhupada says, right, and the very same energy which puts the jiva into illusion, Mahamaya, that same energy, by the grace of the Lord, it then acts to help the purified living being to make progress on the path of self-realization. So the moment the jiva prays to the Lord, oh Lord, I am done serving Maya. I want to serve you. I want to attain you. I want to realize you. So, the prayer that Prabhupada gives us about Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Oh, energy of the Lord. You see, energy of the Lord. Shakti, oh Radhe, oh Hare. That energy, the same energy which has been changed from material, now changed back to spiritual. Oh, energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. The moment we pray like that, Mahamaya changes to Yogamaya, and she now takes charge of our progress. And such a person who is now progressing nicely in spiritual life, Prabhupada says, a man or a woman who is engaged in the activities of the self. What are these activities of the self? Spiritual activities, Krishna consciousness activities, right? Like associating, reading, chanting, doing service, puja, all these various activities of the Lord. That person is called Jivan Mukta, or a liberated person, even in the conditional existence. So the word Jivan Mukta is used. Jivan Mukta, that means he is not yet fully liberated, but so long as he is doing spiritual activities, he is Jivan Mukta, he is liberated. And in the beginning, not all the time he may be doing. So as he goes on, more and more, his material activities will drop, and more his spiritual activities will increase. So then the more and more he becomes Jivan Mukta. So basically, this is the understanding of verses 1.3.28 to 28, 29. Avatari, sorry, not this one. 30 to 34. Okay, these are the verses. So we are just looking back at our chapter progression, right? So as we have now covered the imaginary, after talking about the avatars, Purusha avatar, Leela avatar. Then we talked about how these avatars are all coming from the Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, and including Krishna and all these avatars, they are not material. They are spiritual. And Virat Rupa is not included in the list of these incarnations because that particular form is imaginary, right? It's a material, gross, imaginary form of the Lord, which is not real. So the Lord is spiritual. So we have understood this, and we've given examples to understand the subtle and gross by using analogy of the jiva. How the jiva, having the material body, the gross subtle material body and all that, we help to understand. And the jiva, if he follows a process of self-realization, he can see himself in the pure spirit form and see the Lord. So how does he do this? What are these so-called spiritual process? So therefore, Bhagavatam will continue verses 3.35 all the way to 39. It will talk about the path of the Jivan Mukta. What is this path? Now that we have now introduced this Jivan Mukta, what must we do to become Jivan Mukta? So, evam janmani karmani hi akartur ajanasya cha varnayanti sma kavayo veda guhyanti hritpate. So this particular verse, when we see evam janmani karmani, I'm sure we can remember another verse from the Bhagavad Gita which is very similar, isn't it? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvataha, right? Tyakta deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So this is verse 4.9. So in that verse, Krishna says, we know that one, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, right? It means my activities, my birth, my activities, they are all transcendental. They are not ordinary. They are not material. They are transcendental. One who knows about this, one who understands this, he will not take birth again. He will come back to me. That is the Janma Karma verse. Now let's see the translation of this verse. This is the verse 335 in Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, learned men describe the Janma and Karma of the unborn, which is the Lord. The Lord is known as Aja. Aja means unborn. And inactive. Ajanasya and Akartur. He doesn't, what do you mean by inactive? Akarmani. That means he doesn't perform material activities. So he's inactive materially, not spiritually. So whatever his activities that he does are spiritual. So this is sometimes mistaken by people thinking that the Lord doesn't have any activities at all, right? So the Lord doesn't take birth. So what it's meant here is not a material birth, not a material activity. So akartur. So thus, the learned men describe the Janma and Karma of the unborn and inactive. This is the Lord, right? Which is Veda Guhyani, secret, the secret in the Vedas. So therefore, we wanted to understand what is the path of the Jivan Mukta. The Jivan Mukta, what must we do to become Jivan Mukta? This is what the learned men say, not the Adi Buddhi here, not the unintelligent men. This is what learned men say. They say that if we describe the Janma and Karma of the Lord, which is the secret of the Veda, so the entire Veda secret, the Veda talks about so many things, but this is the secret of the Veda. If we can understand this, right, that is the path of the Jivan Mukta. So Prabhupada says, simply by meditation on such activities, one can attain realization of the Lord. So what are these activities? The activities of the Lord, his birth. Recently we had Krishna Janmashtami, how he takes birth and everything. And then his activities, what he did, the first demon he killed, right? Putana, second demon he killed, which is the Sakatasura, third demon which he killed, which is the Trinavarta, like that, all the different activities, how he played with the cows, with the cow dung and all these things. So this, simply hearing all these activities, this is the process for becoming Jivan Mukta. Simply hearing about the Lord. So therefore, bhakti process begins with Shravanam. hearing. And this will lead to kirtanam, speaking, and that will lead to meditation, smaranam, right? So simply by meditating on such activities, one can attain realization of Brahman. They are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. This is the Lord's mercy. The Lord comes to this world mainly as mercy, to show his activities to us, so that we become attracted, so that we become enamored, so that we become mad about always thinking about the Lord's activities. So this is the merciful form of the Lord, Jagannath. So he is known as Veda Guhyani Hritpate. He is the Lord of the heart. He is Hritpate. So this is the merciful form of the Lord. He comes, he displays his pastimes to attract us, to attract our heart, our minds, our thinking. That's why, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, all these things are there to attract us back to to always think of him. And then Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam continues, Amoga Lila is Sadguna Isha. Now, the Lord here is being described as Amoga Lila. What do we mean by Amoga Lila? Amoga Lila means one whose activities are faultless. He doesn't do anything which is wrong. He is known as Amoga Lila. So we have to understand this very nicely. That's why people, they'd like to say, oh, Krishna, he stole the clothes of the gopis. Isn't this immoral? It's not nice, Oh, Krishna stole, he steals. He stole butter. So why is he showing immoral activities? We shouldn't show children this kind of pastimes, because then they will also start stealing. No, it's not like that. The Lord's activities, every activity, he can steal, he can kill, he can do anything. Every activity of his is wonderful. So this is the secret, because even in his killing, the person he kills is greatly benefited. Definitely he's either liberated or he is brought back to a spiritual form, isn't it? Anyone he kills. When he steals the clothes of the gopis are even happier in their hearts. They are actually relishing special happiness, which is difficult to explain. So before we talk about the Leelas of the Lord, before we go so far into the Bhagavatam and understand all these other various amazing, mysterious pastimes, which sometimes are bewildering, we must understand the basic concepts. He is Amoga Leela. He is faultless. Whatever he does is faultless. We have to keep that straight in our brain. Then we can understand all his other activities, and we will not commit offense in our mind. So Amoga Lila is Sadguna Isha. Sadguna Isha means he is the master of the Sadgunas, the 6 senses. Sometimes guna is also used to refer to the word senses. Prabhupada translates it as the senses. So he's the master of the 6 senses, and he is fully omnipotent with 6 opulences. So here it is describing the special form of the Lord. He's Bhagavan, having 6 opulences, Aishwarya, Virya, opulence, power, Shri, beauty, Jnana, intelligence, renunciation, right? All of these 6 opulences. So Prabhupada says here he is called Amoga Leela, which indicates that there is nothing lamentable in his creation. So people will say, why is this world so terrible? It's not terrible. Everything is wonderful and beautiful. We are in a terrible situation because we have sinned. Because we have sinned, we are put into this situation. If we did not sin, we would not have taken birth in Kali Yuga. We would be enjoying in heavenly planets, right? So we are all in our situation due to whatever that we have, due to our due. So those who create disturbances in his creation are themselves disturbed. So there's nothing lamentable in his creation. Everything is running perfectly according to his plan. So that is also a very important point for us to understand. So he creates, this Lord, he creates, Srijati, maintains, Avati, and annihilates, Ati, the Vishwam, the universes, the various universes. As he breathes out, the universes come out from his body. As he breathes in, the universes enter back into his body and becomes annihilated. And again, he breathes out, again, the universes are created. As he does these things, he is not in the least affected. Jigrati. The word jigrati is specially used to indicate the concept of smell. Just like when we smell something, right? The air which carries, the air is not affected, right? We smell, we are not affected when we smell it. We don't become contaminated by smelling something which is not, when we touch it, we become contaminated. But when we smell it, we don't. So in the same way, the Lord, he's aware, but he is not affected in any way, not in the least, right? So that point is given nicely here in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada says he creates these manifested universes in order to reclaim the living beings. This is the main purpose. He is Asmin Bhuteshu Cha Antarhitaha. So what he does, he enters into every living entity's heart. Asmin Bhuteshu, he enters into all the living entities, Antarhitaha, inside them as Paramatma. So he goes into them as Paramatma, but though he is Paramatma and he is carried by the living entities in their body, right? But he is always independent. He is never affected. So this is very, very interesting because it is paradox. It is like, he is inside, yet he's not affected. So it's difficult to understand. So it takes someone with a little bit more spiritual intelligence to come to the level where they can digest that. So that's why this information is not presented to those Adhibuddhihi, the lower intelligent people. For them, okay, Virat Rupa, the Lord is the universe, and then the Lord is Virat Rupa and things like that. So therefore, Prabhupada says, non-godly elements, therefore, can never approach him despite all endeavors. The Lord is always spiritually aloof. Without any using material contraptions, material concepts, one cannot ever hope to achieve the Lord. We can build the greatest of microscopes, but we will never see Paramatma. We can build the greatest of telescopes, but we will never see the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So that is the point. And we can have the greatest of brain, we can try to philosophize all kinds of concepts, but we will never approach the Lord using material, mundane concepts. So therefore, Bhagavatam says this, the Agnya means the foolish with a poor fund of knowledge, right, cannot know the transcendental nature of the activities, Namani and Rupani, the names, the Rupa of the Lord. They cannot know the transcendental nature. So, and they cannot know how the Lord is playing like an actor in a drama. So this is what the Lord does. He comes into this material world, he performs his various leela, just like how an actor plays in a Natacharyam. The word Natacharyam is used. It's like, it means drama, a play. So this particular word is used to describe the Lord's activities on earth. Very interesting, right? So here you can see, the Lord dancing on Kaliya. Interestingly, we will see the same point again mentioned by Queen Kunti. Later, when we talk about Queen Kunti's prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam, she will repeat the same point also. Bhishmadev also will say something similar. So this is the first time it's mentioned. Nor can they express such things. Who is they? The Agnya, the foolish. They cannot see all this. They cannot understand the Lord's activities as so. Because the Lord, the Lord pretends like he's being killed. So Krishna, when his pastime, later we will see how Krishna in his pastime, the hunter will shoot an arrow and the arrow will pierce his foot, it seems, and then the foot and the arrow will cause the Lord to leave the body. So all this is drama. We will hear about this in later parts of the canto. In this canto alone, in Canto 1, later on we will hear, towards the end, the Lord's departure. And we can understand. But now, let us go step by step. Nor can they express such things. The foolish, they cannot express all these points in their speculation or in their words, mana and vacho, in their mind or in their words. They cannot understand. So they come up with all kinds of nonsense books. And this is one of that person, Agnya. This is Richard Dawkins. He's the #1 atheist at the moment. And he's a professor in UK. And then he comes up with all kinds of atheistic concepts. He's an evolutionary biologist. So he wrote the book called The God Delusion. And a lot of atheists are trying to download his books, right? And they like to read. So he's a firm atheist. So you can see here what he says. Huh? The question of whether there exists a supernatural creator, a God, is one of the most important that we have to answer. I think that is a scientific question. My answer is no. There is no God. So he's trying to use word jugglery to confuse people to think that scientifically he's saying that there is no God. That is nonsense. So he uses the word scientific. So it is unscientific to say there is no God because there is no clear explanation about creation otherwise. Of course, he has not understood the Vedic scriptures. So let's not look at him. The Vedic scriptures say that if we see an atheist face, we must look at the sun to purify ourselves. Now is night time, but later I will show the picture of the Lord, then we can purify ourselves. So Prabhupada says the mental speculators, because they are also within the grip of illusion, they take it for granted that anything which has form, a name and activities is but a product of material energy. So this is why Virat Rupa is created. For these people, the Lord is so merciful. To these people also, he creates such concepts, right? So these mental speculators, scientists, they are also within the grip of illusion, Maya Shakti. So they cannot understand. They take it for granted that anything that has a form like them, a name like them, and activities like them must be like them, material, subjected to birth, old age, disease, and death. So that's for that reason, there are people who say that Krishna is an ordinary human being. Lord Ram is another ordinary human being. The real hero of Ramayana is Ravana, because a North Indian king came and killed a South Indian king, Tamilian. So we cannot accept that. So Tamil Nadu actually gave an award for the person who wrote a book on that. There was a person in Tamil Nadu who wrote a book saying that Ravana is the real hero, and he got an award from the government. So, of course, Tamil Nadu government is atheistic, so that is what they would do. And Richard Dawkins is very popular there. So they are all misled by the illusory energy. And Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, the foolish cannot understand my birth and activities, and they deride me as an ordinary human. He says that in the Gita, right? So, let me check the time. Okay, a bit more, almost done. So, sa veda dhatu paravim sparasya duranta viryasya ratanga pane yo amayaya santatayanu vrittya bhajita tat pada saroja gandham. So, who can understand all this then? So, how do we understand? So, here the path of the Jivan Mukta is presented. Only those who render unreserved, amayaya, unreserved, uninterrupted, santataya, favorable, anuvrittaya, service unto, bhajeta, comes from the word bhaja, service, right? Bhakti. Service unto the Saroja Gandham Pada, the lotus feet of that person the lotus feet emanates the scent of lotuses. Saroja is lotus, Gandham means scent, Pada means feet. So anyone's feet emanates lotus fragrance, such a person would be Krishna, right? So service to that lotus feet, which is unreserved, uninterrupted, and favorable, only those people who do these things can understand the Lord. So we see this similarity many, many times. In the earlier Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto, chapter 2, we see a similar verse. Savai Pumsham Paro Dharmo, right? The ultimate Dharma, the greatest Param Dharma of all living entities is to perform Bhaktir Aduksaje, to perform Bhakti to Aduksaja, one who is beyond matter. And this Bhakti must be Ahaituki. Ahaituki has the same meaning as this, unreserved. That means it is without any kind of reservation. One does it constantly, constant. Apratihata, uninterrupted, never interrupted. Same. Apratihata and Santataya has the same meaning, right? So, and we also see Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is a famous verse. It is also repeated by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. The definition of pure devotional service. Anya bilashita sunyam, jnana karmadi anavritam, anukulyena. Anukulyena means favorable. So one should perform devotional service free from any desire, free from desire for knowledge, jnana or karma, fruitive, free from all these things, but it's done favorably, not because it's being forced to or unfavorably. Favorably it's done. So these points are mentioned. So only these person, favorably, one who performs these things to the Saroja Gandham Pada. Who has Saroja Gandham Pada? The one whose feet emanates the scent of lotus. Who is that person? That person is Ratangapane. Ratangapane has the feet of Saroja Gandha. Who is Ratangapane? Ratangapane means one, the Lord who carries in his hand the wheel of a chariot. Now, this is the pastime where the Lord did that. When the Lord was fighting, the Arjuna was fighting in the Mahabharata, Bhishma, he was shooting arrows to such an extent because Bhishma, he made a promise to Arjuna, to Duryodhana. Duryodhana bugged him, and then Bhishma finally said, okay, I promise he will die tomorrow. And he is very powerful. He could, draw with Parashuram also. Bhishmadev is extremely powerful. So he shot arrows in such a way to keep his promise, which is a small matter. But his real purpose was he wanted to see how Krishna will protect Arjuna. He wanted to force Krishna to protect Arjuna in such a way that Krishna will break his promise. So therefore, when he did this, Arjuna was already in trouble and Krishna was seeing, oh, this is too much. So immediately he dropped, he came down to the earth and he grabbed a chariot wheel and he rushed towards Bhishma to stop Bhishma from killing Arjuna. So, and in this way, he showed Bhishma, I will break my promise that I will never fight just to save my devotee. This is the Lord, the Supreme Lord. So he is known as Ratangapane, one who carries the wheel of the chariot. And he's proud to be known as that because he did it to save his devotee. So Bhagavatam continues, only such a person who performs devotional service to this personality, to Krishna, he only can know the creator of the universe in his full glory, padavim, power, viryasya, and transcendence, parasya. So only a pure devotee, only a devotee who performs devotional practices, one who performs bhakti, he can fully understand the Supreme Lord. So that is the conclusion of this verse. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. So Sutta Goswami now continues telling everyone, right? So therefore, one must make such inquiries. You understand already, okay, we must do bhakti. Okay, how to do bhakti? So now we must go and make inquiries. We must spend our life, our mind, our intelligence to find out how to do this bhakti correctly. So what will happen when we make such inquiries? For such inquiries, invoke Atma Bhavan unto Vasudev. They invoke spiritual ecstasy. These inquiries and their answers, the process of inquiring and getting answer invokes ecstasy. It creates attachment and love unto Vasudeva, who is the Lord of the universe, Lokanath. And when we do this, it guarantees 10% guarantee, right? Immunity from the dreadful Ugra, the dreadful repetition of birth and death. So that's just a side thing, right? Automatically, this thing is done. We don't take birth and death. The moment we take up bhakti, the moment we start hearing, the moment we start practicing devotional service, we are already guaranteed no repetition of birth and death. The question is just whether we are going to get prema or not. We are already going to be liberated. Even the least amount of bhakti is sufficient. The question is whether we can get prema or not. So that it's a very careful business. Bhakti must be carefully done to get prema bhakti. The goal of life is prema pumarto mahan, to get prema bhakti. And that Krishna doesn't easily give. We have to do it very carefully. We must read Bhagavatam scrutinizingly to understand how to do this. So therefore, idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Sloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishraya Saya Lokasya Danyam Swasti Ayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary. So where can we understand all these things? Where is this inquiry and answer about bhakti and all this path towards Jivan Mukta and all this understanding about the incarnation of the Lord? Where can we hear all these things? All these things we can hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the answer, right? Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, Brahma Samhitam. He is God himself. And it is compiled by Srila Vyasudev. Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam, right? Bhagavan Rishi, Vyasadev, he is Bhagavan, he compiled all these things. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So this is the answer to the sixth question of the sages. You know, they asked, right? Where can Bhagavatam take shelter? Sorry, where can we take shelter now that Kali Yuga is coming? But before he answers that in full, he reiterates the first question: what is all good for the people in general? So what is all good? Srimad Bhagavatam is all good, the ultimate good of all people, right? And it is Danyam, all successful, Swasti, all blissful, Swasti Ayanam, all blissful, Mahat, all perfect. Nothing is, therefore it is called spotless Purana, right? The scriptures, every other Purana has some blemish because it's within the three modes. Whereas Bhagavatam alone is transcendental, it's called Amala Purana. So we have now covered all the way to the Jivan Mukta, understood how Jivan Mukta, what is the path of the Jivan Mukta, where can we go for the answers to become Jivan Mukta? So the answers lie in Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is verses 40 to 44. Just kindly give me another 5 minutes. I will try to finish this chapter. Right, we are almost done. So Srila Prabhupada says, we can have all the transcendental light of the Supreme Brahman, Sri Krishna, from the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. Brahma Samhitam, Uttama Sloka Charitam. He is Krishna himself, right? And Prabhupada re-establishes that all the transcendental light of the Supreme Brahman, Sri Krishna, simply by the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Provided there is a clause, provided It is received through the medium of the person Bhagavatam, self-realized bona fide spiritual master, and through him only can one understand the lessons of Bhagavatam in order to receive the desired result. So it has to come through the parampara. So Prabhupada took a lot of effort to write the Srimad Bhagavatam translation, and he gave elaborate purports. So especially the first canto, because he thought he won't have time to write the other cantos. So he really poured all his realizations within that first canto. So it's a lot of purports. So therefore, these purports are the grace of the Guru, so that we can understand. And we must hear it from a devotee also, one who is at least practicing the devotional practice. Otherwise, we won't get the desired result. We'll get some other result. Bhagavatam is like Chintamani. It can give you anything, but if you want Krishna Prema, we have to follow the process, right? One can derive from the study of the Bhagavatam benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. This is very interesting. Imagine if the Lord is right in front of us, standing there. Prabhupada says, the same benefit of the Lord standing right in front of us can be derived from the presence of Bhagavatam. It carries with it all the transcendental blessings of the Lord that we can expect from his personal contact. So very important points. That's why we must have Bhagavatam in our house, right? And not only have Bhagavatam, we worship Bhagavatam by reading it and following its instruction and cherishing it and glorifying it and reciting it and remembering the verses. So many things we can do to worship Srimad Bhagavatam. So then this verse comes. Sri Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, right? His son, Vyasadeva, is Krishna's incarnation, so we cannot manufacture our own Bhagavatam. It has to come from God. So God himself came, Satyavesh avatar, and he extracted Bhagavatam, and he gave it to his son, who is not an ordinary person. He is Maha Bhagavat also, Bhagavat Avesha. His son is Suta Goswami. His son is Sukadev. Sukadev Goswami, right? This is his son, Sukadev Goswami. This is a picture, right? Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized. Why he's most respected? Because he came from the spiritual world. He is actually the parrot of Radharani. So Sukadev came from the spiritual world. There's a pastime and all that, but apparently, there is the curse and all these things. But he came and took birth as the son of Vyasadeva, and to him, Bhagavatam was recited, and he could fully understand it. And because he came from the spiritual world, he could recite it even better than Vyasadeva. Therefore, coming from the mouth of Shukadev, it became even sweeter. So after extracting, so what did Vyasadeva do? He extracted the cream of all Vedic literatures. Look at this verse. This verse uses saram, sarva vede tishtasanam. So sarva means all the Vedas and itihasa. Itihasas are the histories, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Puranas, right? Sarva Vedas, everything, all the Vedas, he took out the saram, the essence. Saram again, second time he extracted the essence of the essence. So the essence of all Vedic scriptures, the cream of Vedic literatures is the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And that he compiled and he gave it to Sukadev Goswami, who even further enriched it by his realization. So Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn, delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit. So we won't talk about this today. This is Parikshit Maharaj, a great Mahabhagavata. So one Mahabhagavata gave Srimad Bhagavatam to another Mahabhagavata, right? And we will hear about, if we are patient, we can hear more about Parikshit and Sukadev Goswami in the later chapters of this canto. So Prabhupada says, Unless, therefore, Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature are received through the Parampara system, the reception of knowledge is not bona fide and we will not get the real purport of it. We will get misled. We won't get the real actual fruit. So therefore, Emperor Parikshit was there to hear Bhagavatam. Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by Parama Rishis, there were so many great Rishis who sat with Emperor Parikshit on the banks of the Ganga, awaiting death without taking food and drink. So, in fact, Sripad Sankaracharya, he says, at the critical time of death, all your knowledge will not save you. Chant the name of Govinda, 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 with realization. That alone will save you. Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Muda Mate, oh foolish persons, chant Bhaja Govinda, chant the name of Govinda, right? So in the same way, at the time of death, Parikshit Maharaj, the best thing to do at the time of death is to hear Bhagavatam, right? So this Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun. So what is this mystery of Parikshit Maharaj at the time of his death and all that? All this we will hear later. So let's continue. 2 more verses. This Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen, Uditaha, it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna. That means, in other words, it came just for Kali Yuga. It has arrived because Lord Krishna left and then Kali Yuga started. So this Bhagavatam came after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own dham. So the Lord departed to his own abode. He didn't die like an ordinary human being, like how the atheists would like to say, right? So here it says, the Lord departed to his own dhamma, accompanied by, he didn't leave alone. When he left to his spiritual world, he also brought dharma and jnana with him because Kali Yuga is coming. So religiosity, dharma, and jnana, knowledge, is brought with him. So it was lost in Kali Yuga. But at the same time, Bhagavatam arose in his stead. Now we already established Bhagavatam is as good as Krishna, right? So now it arose in his stead. So therefore, persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of the ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So this is the hope. This is the hope. This is the answer to the 6th question of the sages. Now that Krishna is gone, together with all dharma, religiosity, knowledge, everything auspicious, where can we go and take shelter? Where does religion take shelter? So it takes shelter in Bhagavatam. So we also take shelter in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada says, real dharma or religion means to know God, our religion with him, our relation with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination. So we need to know who is God, what is my relationship with him, and what is my ultimate destination. So, Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojan. We need to know this. This is real religion. Otherwise, it is cheating religion. And in Kali Yuga, it's a very terrible situation. The population is just a royal addition of the animals. So Prabhupada is very humorous. He likes to say these nice words. So the population is a royal addition of animals. So we are like royal animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are just into satisfying their senses. That means they are like animals. There's a royal addition. So they are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego, but they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, material prosperity. They cannot even understand subtle materials, mind, intelligence, ego, but they are very proud of all these things. And now we come to the last verse. O Vipra, Vipra means learned Brahmana. O learned Brahmana, when Sukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there at the banks of the Ganga to Parikshit Maharaj, I was also there. I heard him because I was seated amongst the other sages. Who is he? Sutta Goswami. I heard him with rapt attention, nivistaha, very important point, right? And thus, by his anugrahat, by the mercy of Sukadev Goswami, by his anugrahat, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. So Prabhupada makes a very important point here. Simply hearing is not enough. It's very wonderful. Yes, we get purified. But if we want to see Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam, if we want to get Krishna prema, right, one must realize the text with proper attention. So that's why the word here he is used, rapt attention, nivistaha. So no one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. So if we want to have rapt attention, we must first purify our mind. And no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. So if we want to purify our mind, we must purify our activities. And what are our activities? Naturally, our activities are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So we must purify these things by not eating certain things. You know, that's why we follow the 4 regulative principles, right? To uphold mercy, to be truthful, to practice austerity, and to practice cleanliness. So these things uphold the 4 pillars of dharma, and this purifies together with our spiritual sadhana. Therefore, we purify our eating. Instead of eating anything and everything, we eat prasadam. And when we sleep, we only sleep for the purpose so that we can perform seva better. And fearing we have to purify. That is, we fear the Lord. We fear we fear Vaishnava aparat. We don't fear other things. And mating, sexual activity for the purpose of getting Krishna conscious children, that is me, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, we limit ourselves to these things. We purify all these things. We purify our mind. Then we purify our mind. Then we can give rapt attention to hearing Bhagavatam. So that's why simply hearing Bhagavatam for recreation or for intellectual pleasure is not the purpose. We need to also practice our sadhana. We need to chant. At least we should chant. That's why I was telling every day, minimum we should chant. Prabhupada says we should chant 16 rounds minimum. So we should get there slowly. So anyone who's hearing Bhagavatam at least should start by chanting daily 4 rounds, go on to 8 rounds, go on to 12 rounds, and eventually go on to 16 rounds. And then we can understand all this purport very nicely. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in the person, see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of the Bhagavatam. So hearing from the right source is very important, right? We don't want to hear from Mayavadas, those who are atheist, those who are all this Adi Buddhihi. We don't want to hear from them. We want to hear from devotees. Especially we want to hear from realized devotees. Whenever we get the chance to hear Bhagavatam from the lips of very advanced devotees, we should take the benefit. So I don't have these qualifications, right? So but I have one, but I'm trying to do something Bhagavatam is telling me. So therefore, for people like me who try to give classes on Bhagavatam without having this qualification, Sutta Goswami is very merciful. He gives the last point. Now, I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. So, the secret here is we make you hear the very same thing. So, therefore, my qualification here is simply that I'm trying to repeat whatever Prabhupada has said and what the Acharyas have said and what I have heard and as I have realized it. So hopefully that will qualify this criteria to speak Bhagavatam, and by the grace of Guru and Srila Prabhupada. So with that we end. Thank you very much. Let's say the final verse. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. So I'm so sorry, time is really extended to 40. So I just wanted to finish it, don't want to carry it forward. So next time I can start straight away with the next chapter, chapter 4. So thank you for bearing with me. If there are any questions, I can answer. If you'd like to leave, please don't let me keep you waiting. But if there are any questions, I can just answer. Let me see. There's nothing in the chat, so that's okay. Okay. You can also unmute and speak if there's anything. Otherwise, if something occurs to you, please put it in the WhatsApp and we can discuss about it. Hare Krishna. I think there are no questions. So thank you again. Apologies again for the late timing. I'm very, very sorry about that. But I hope it is beneficial to anyone. So we'll see you again. We'll have again after 2 weeks. So with that, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I'll see you all.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you so much,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Vitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo.